Welcome to the Fitness Industry Success Show. Ideas, inspiration, and interviews to take your fitness business to the next level. With over 23 years of fitness industry experience and the founder of LEADLION, an innovative fitness marketing agency, here's your host, Nick Parker.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Fitness Industry Success Show. I'm so excited. We have an amazing guest for you here today, Kevin MacCauley. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the founder and CEO of Upper Hand. He is an active businessman and entrepreneur in the startup and tech community, and Kevin founded Upper Hand, which is a leading provider of sports and fitness management software back in 2012. After seeing a huge opportunity to completely revolutionize the industry while serving as a baseball coach. We may have to talk about that a little bit. Kevin actively supports startups right now and sports communities as a Techstar sports accelerator, which is really huge. He's a mentor there, and then oversees predictive analytics programs with Butler University, and he's deep into the fitness industry. Kevin, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Hey, pleasure to be on here. Thanks again for hosting, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you. So, hey, we're going to be talking about, how brick and mortar fitness companies can compete with this new on-demand world with big brands like Peloton and things like that. But it's going to be a great show. We've got a lot to talk about on how you guys as fitness business owners can compete with this on-demand world. But before we do that, are you up for playing Two Truths and One Lie?
I sure am. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So here's the rules of the game. What you're going to do is you're going to come up with two things that are true, one that's a lie, no particular order. I'm going to guess, and then we're going to have our viewers guess which one is the lie.
All right, so just go one after the other, right?
Yeah, one after the other,
cool.
And no particular order. See if I can get it. See if you can stump me.
All right, let's do it. So the first one would be, have I ever listened to Frank Sinatra and Don Mattingly's Tahoe when he was driving? Second, I'm a vegan. And then third, I built a Field of Dreams when I was 10.
You built a Field of Dreams?
Yeah.
Okay, so Frank Sinatra with Don Mattingly, you're a vegan, and you built the Field of Dreams when you were 10.
Yeah, built a light version of Field of Dreams as a kid.
Wow, this one's tough. The other two are so far-fetched, I'm going to say you're not a vegan.
Okay, fair enough. All right, that's the lie.
That is the lie. I got it. Okay, I sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. That's pretty good. So what's the story on this whole Don Mattingly thing with Frank Sinatra?
Well, so I went to the same high school as Don Mattingly. I'm from Evansville, Indiana. We played for the same Hall of Fame baseball coach, Quentin Merkel. And over the years, obviously, you get to know Don Mattingly. Actually, still owns the house and lives there in the off season in that hometown, Evansville. But
Nice.
I played baseball with one of his sons, and he would drive us to some of the Legion games. And we're in the back seat of the car, and he was like, "What do you want to listen to?" And I said, "It's Frank Sinatra." And he was fresh off of retiring from baseball, obviously being a Yankee, and so was a big fan of throwing on some Frank Sinatra stuff.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, I was like skeptical, but I'm like, that's too intricate. You can't make that up.
Yeah, I thought about that. All right, how detailed do you get on the?
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. Well, thanks for playing along, and hopefully you guys guessed it. But so let's dive in. We got an incredible show today. There's been a huge movement, and then what happened with the pandemic really accelerated that movement of this on-demand world where you have the Pelotons of the world, where you can do fitness on demand, you can take classes, ride a bike, do a treadmill workout. There's the Mirror, where you can work out at home. So I do believe that there's a place for the brick and mortar fitness company that'll never be replaced. But I will say we've seen a shift where they have gained some serious market share, and whether people are doing both or they're choosing one or the other. So this is going to be a really interesting topic to dive in with your knowledge base, and you've written some articles on this to get a better understanding of how can these fitness companies compete with or coincide with these on-demand fitness companies that are taking the world by storm and driving everything through data. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my passion is talking about this type of stuff, right? So I get to work with, thousands of businesses in sports and fitness every day, and have for the last, 10 years. we recently hosted about a year ago, coming out of COVID, an event that we called the Uplift Roundtable that was really brought together 9 CEOs of folks from CEOs from the fitness industry. Josh York from Gym Guys being one of those folks. We had Matt Lane from Streamline Brands, one of the largest swim franchises in the country. We had representation from Curves, et cetera. And one of the interesting things about that, and really interesting things about COVID, is you're not only dealing with something so rare coming out of a pandemic, but the industry was already dealing with some major disruption as it relates to Peloton. I think COVID really opened people's eyes to, okay, Peloton is definitely for real. So helped people that maybe in fitness would have been reluctant to sort of buy into that market disruption, right, from a at-home workout, and not just all the digital stuff that's happening. But COVID really presented 2 major problems for our industry, and the first being obviously how do you reopen, which was the conversation we had with that Uplift Roundtable, and not just reopen in terms of wiping down equipment and stuff that should have already been happening before a pandemic to begin with,
Right.
And more about, well, what do you actually do from a business perspective? I mean, if you can only have 25-50% capacity, should you even open, or should you stay closed? Like, is it a losing business proposition to open in those situations? And we looked at things like the sacrifice your members would have to make coming into a place that there's this new fear, this feeling of fear that could keep them away now that they have options like Peloton. And honestly, I think Mir and some of the other ones, Tonal, that are out there, have grown a lot faster than even I would have expected coming off the heels of the pandemic. And I've used all of them, and they're all excellent tools. But so I think it really is a question for brick and mortar. How do you compete? And there's a way to do it. I think anytime there's challenges, there's opportunity. And,
Right, absolutely.
For the industry, there's a chance to stand out and see. You can either, there's a quote out there, you can either run with it or run from it. And, that really is the mindset you have to have. If you're going to run from what's happening in the industry, then, it's probably time to sell your location or move on to something else. But if you're going to run with it, there's a lot of fun that you can have, just by exploring the change that's happening in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about, 4 different areas that can help these brick and mortar fitness companies to compete and to work with. But I'm curious, you know a lot about these different companies. You've tried all 3. Who do you think the avatar is, or the demographic, or the typical buyer of this type of product, where it's Tonal, Mir, Peloton, or anything like that that's in this on-demand world that really loves that type of product? Do you have an idea of who that typical person would be, like avatar-wise?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. As somebody that started a couple companies and been in the startup world for a while, oftentimes I think when you think vision and strategy, I put myself in as a consumer. I think a lot of people, let's use Tesla and Apple as an example. There's some people that just hate Apple, and there's some people that hate Tesla. And there's investors out there that have been hammering on Tesla forever, right? A lot of that is, some of the big auto, trying to hush down the electronic, movement. But a lot of those people have never been in a Tesla. And so I thought to myself, I don't really know much about it, so I'm gonna go test drive one. And you're just, holy cow. I mean, this is a totally different way of driving, right? It's the same thing as, it's in the same space as the big auto, but it's not even close to the same thing, right? And so when it comes to the avatar behind a Peloton or somebody else, it's like, you're running a fitness, brick and mortar store. Like, obviously you've grown in this industry, go take a class. I mean, even though it's like, in your eyes, maybe the enemy or whatever you want to call it, hop on the bike, hop on a treadmill, and you're going to quickly find out why people are so bought into it. I own Peloton, but I also love going to the gym. I do both. So I think the avatar is really people who are super busy. All the reasons that people don't get into the gym, or they're only coming into a group class 2.5 times a week, versus getting down in the basement 4 or 5 times a week. It's convenience. It's being busy. It's, it is part of that community aspect to it. And then COVID just threw everybody into the basement. So there's nothing, no other option. So everybody kind of quickly found that out. But I would say, it's really the same people that are coming into your gym or fitness studio or doing the private training. Those are the people. And we talked about this, before, Nick, that, really the more people working out, the greater the demographic you can serve. The larger your market size becomes in your area, right? So again, it goes back to run with it or run from it. And I think in this case, people really do need to run with it, because it's an exciting thing for the space, and it's only going to bring more people into your store if you're hitting the right message and doing the right things from a business perspective.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And it's interesting to see how this is going to pan out over the next 5 years or so, because it's still new, it's still disruptive. And typically 20% of any local market will be a member somewhere of a studio, a gym, or yoga, Pilates, whatever. They will have a membership somewhere, and that's 1 out of 5 people. And we believe, based on the data, that's going to climb above 30% in the next several years because of what happened with the pandemic. But it's a race to the market, right? Who's going to get what? And then, like we talked about earlier, Kevin, we think that possibly these can coexist together in a beautiful way if the gyms do this right. So let's talk about these 4 things real quick, and how a brick and mortar fitness company can still win market share and compete with, or at least coincide with, and still win market share with these kind of companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a nice little article I did maybe a year or two ago that I wrote up about how to compete with Peloton and win. And the 4 things were tied to production, distribution, talent, and technology. And those 4 things are essentially at a high level. You've got production being the entertainment, sort of the fitness content, right? Like the ability to produce and motivate a great workout. The equivalent of this in an in-person brick and mortar, a Barry's boot camp, right? Home run production,
Right.
great workout. And there's a lot of them out there, right? We don't have time to name all of them, but Les Mills, I would see as a leader in terms of production. But then distribution, right? The means to access consumers in the segments themselves, right? Obviously with Peloton, they can use the digital app for, what is it, $15 a month or whatever, to then get them bought in on the workout, and then they end up buying the equipment, and now they're really bought in.
Yeah. And so, Kevin, before you dive into the other points, can we back up a little bit and talk about that production? I want to take at least a couple minutes to expand that, to help people really understand what we're talking about here, because you really nailed it on the head when you said production. Because you can walk into a certain studio or gym, take almost the same type of class, and have a completely different experience based on the production. And so Barry's Bootcamp, you brought them up as being really good at production. What are some of the elements that they had that you felt really leveled up their production and made it really inviting and exciting and something you wanted to be a part of?
Yeah, great question. And one of them is talent, which is one of the 4 that I talk about. But the production of the music, the lighting, the experience, really, right? When we talk production, is what is that experience you get working out? And it's like going to a club and you leave having burned 1,200 calories. Like, it's the greatest workout you've ever had.
Right.
And, obviously you got to like some upbeat music, but, I think that's really it, right? It's the experience that you're providing in that production, the ability to produce the content too, right? I know, it's not the cheapest thing to produce great content, right? I mean, people in COVID just started doing Zoom, or Facebook Live and some of these other things that you also got to be careful about, making that your first entry point into digital, because that first experience can create a really a difficult challenge to overcome. If people are like, man, that experience is really bad, right? So, you don't have the ability or the luxury of being able to market to a lot of other people, right? I mean, your goal is to get people in a geographic radius into your store, right? So while people are like, oh, let's go digital and we can go global with it, that's fine. But those people, 2 states away aren't coming into your store, right? Or coming into your facility. So you got
Yeah,
to think
plus
about
it's really hard to compete globally because you're dealing with national brands with bigger budgets and a lot more data. You don't want to compete globally. You want to compete locally for that on demand and in person, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about that then, right? So I call it the X factor in this write-up, and really the X factor being whoever can bring digital and the in-person together the fastest really wins in the market. And I think I talked a little bit about Peloton and Exponential Fitness as well, which is obviously the largest boutique fitness brand in the world. But the whole idea behind that is there's a huge advantage for the brick and mortar in that the stars are in your building, right? The Olivia Motos, the Cody Rigsbys of Peloton. going back to Barry's boot camp. When I went there, it was one class. I don't remember the instructor's name, but I would go back to that instructor again, multiple times a week. And that's part of that production, right? And the entertainment is the stars are inside your building. And I think it really, really shows that you almost got to treat these people within the team like, professional athletes, from a, how you contract them, how you pay them, how you promote them, right? Obviously, everybody knows about Michael Jordan. That's an easy one to talk about, or Tiger Woods.
Right.
The Bulls aren't, when Michael Jordan was playing for the Bulls, they were getting people, into the United Center, talking just Bulls. I mean, Jordan's everywhere.
Right.
And you and I talked about that. It's like, focus on that, identify who those top trainers are. Who are your stars that could be the reason to go in? Because I can tell you right now, if, a couple blocks down, Olivia Moto was about to do a class, you'd have people lying around the block to go in.
Absolutely.
And that's where you unlock that X factor, I think,
right.
as a brick and mortar.
That's so huge. I'm so excited. I got chills right now just thinking about this. And I also know that you just scared a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I will tell you what I mean by that, because there's a lot of, let's say, big box health clubs, right? And they pay their group fitness instructors a flat fee per class, and it's typically pretty minimal. If you go to like an Orange Theory or something like that, they may get like upwards of $50+ per class, which is a lot more. But we're moving into an age, and you nailed it on the head, and this gets me excited. We're moving into an age where the personal trainer, the coach, the instructor is building their own personal brand online and their own following. So they will begin to follow them wherever they go. So when you said to treat them like professional athletes and have contracts in place and different pay structures and bonus, and you build superstars out of them, and instead of fighting them having a personal brand, you welcome it, support it, contract them, and bring them in to fill your facility, the revenue will pay off, right? So is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Absolutely. And you are right. People do have that concern. Getting somebody to become a star, and then, all right, well, they move on. And there's the fear of, do they take clients with them? And it's a real fear. It happens in sports as well, right? I mean, anybody who's played sports growing up, if you did any private training, you probably continue to do training because you loved that coach. You had a connection and whatnot with that person. And that is the exact same thing in fitness. I mean, people are showing up. Yeah, the people, sit next to them. Obviously, it's more exciting to work around the people you like. But that trainer is the reason you go. It's the reason, you're going to get up off the bike, and pedal a little faster. So I think the reality is, though, you also got to take the counter argument of, okay, well, let's take that. We're going to continue to be feared, have fear of people leaving. So do we not want to recruit great trainers anymore? Do we not want to push those people forward? Do we not want to be a facility that locally is known as the place, to go if you're an up and coming, trainer and instructor, that you could start your career? Obviously, we have to think about that as a company at upper hand, right? I mean, I'm not hiring people thinking this is what they're going to do the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hire people that have aspirations to do other things,
right?
And they serve a purpose here. And if this is the platform to get to the next, awesome level of their career, that's great, because then that means we're hiring people that seek out greatness. And I think that's kind of the mindset you have to have when you think about the trainer piece, because it's not going to go away. It's only going to become more relevant. And your competitors locally, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah, it's existed, and every fitness business owner understands this. If you own a studio, you know who your rock star coach is. If you own a health club and remember when Zumba was really, really hot, you always had a geographic Zumba instructor that people were driving 20, 30 minutes to go see, even if they were members somewhere else. So it's not like it's a surprise, but what we need to start thinking about is maybe reevaluating how we're contracting these people and facilitating their brand and using it to the advantage of everyone so everybody wins. And I love that. So that's the third tip, by the way, which is talent, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it, it's happened before. I mean, if you look at, the 80s, I mean, there's a new show coming out on Apple TV called, Physical. And, it's at home, back when they had VHS tapes, people working out, you pop it in and you're doing aerobics. It's like, it's been around.
Right.
Peloton just figured out a way to make their instructors absolute superstars, and they've got equipment with it, but at the end of the day, I really, Peloton's a data and analytics company more than they are, hardware and software. And that's important too, and we won't get too technical on the data side, but knowing what your customers want, right? If you have a gym, I mean, obviously you have more than one piece of equipment, right? Because you're trying to attract different types of people that want to do different types of workouts. That's no different than what's happening in the digital world, right? It's all right. Well, now we have to have a part of our space that's dedicated to digital. I mean, how awesome would it be if your place was always the one that had the newest type of digital equipment and, part of the space that people could always be able to try out,
Right.
or get outside of the house to do a Peloton. I mean, that would be awesome. And it's not just Peloton, it's other platforms and digital pieces too. But then you as a business owner and your team are learning what people are doing, and you can start to then add value by putting training programs together that target maybe those Peloton people that are like, man, you know what, maybe I could be not a professional cyclist, but do some races. Maybe I want to put on a certain amount of weight, right? Well, now you've got data on what, those types of leads within your building that you can target to convert for programs, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be interesting too to see maybe a hybrid situation where you said maybe there's a cycle studio that offers Peloton 2 days a week or something like that, and it's all done, I don't know, to where you have community in person, and I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see the way that ends up panning out and working.
No, yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So we talked about production, we talked about talent, we glossed over distribution, which was your actual second point. Can we hit on that real quick before we go to the fourth point?
Yeah, absolutely. So distribution really is looking at just the means to access consumers via those different segments. So making it easy to get your content. So if you're all digital, getting the digital in front of those consumers. If you're in person, being able to get your group workouts, whatever your offerings are to those people. I think as a brick and mortar, you have a really unique opportunity because you have members already, right? So you don't need to go advertise to them outside of the facility. You can distribute whatever content you produce to the people that are already consumers, right? So I think having access to that is really, really important. And then I think Peloton's making it easier to get more people into that ecosystem that we can then target from a distribution perspective.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, great. Yeah, I was wanting to touch on that just a little bit more. Let's talk about tech. So we talked about production, talked about distribution, we talked about how important talent is and the new personal brand economy. Let's talk about the tech side and like these studios and these health clubs and that. Peloton's got their tech dialed in. Tonal has their tech dialed in. What about these brick and mortar fitness companies? How do they compete with this tech?
Well, yeah, there's you're not going to build the next, bike, or digital software app, right? So you got to think about the strengths, again, kind of goes to some SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and look at from a technology perspective, what's a weakness, right? A weakness of a brick and mortar would be, all right, well, let's not spend time doing CRM stuff, building Zoom classes, like focus on what you can offer, right? The instructors, right? You guys have the instructors there. Focus on how do we get, pay a couple $100, get somebody come and do a photo shoot, turn those into the ads that you use to make them superstars when they come into the facility. Redesign, some of the group workout pieces of the facility. Really thinking about how you can leverage technology to offload some of the administrative stuff, because you have more administrative stuff to do, right? And this is the thing about Peloton that people always forget. Before COVID, they were running real studios. So they had the expertise of not just doing digital by itself, right? They were running 3 or 4 in-person studios to produce the content, right? So the reason the classes were so good to start is because they know how awkward it can be if you don't have people in a class and you record it. And you got everybody on who's listening to this or watching will know you can go find any virtual class and watch it. And you're like, I would never work out to that because it is so awkward. But Peloton hit it on the head because they were just recording an actual class, and they just happen to have really good equipment, which is using new technology and cameras, and they just nailed that piece. So that's something important to keep in mind, and that's a huge value asset to an opportunity to brick and mortars, because you guys have been running your facility, like people have been running in-person classes. And so leverage that, right? Test some different recording stuff. buy some cameras, work with a local university, that is known to have students or programs for digital design, or production, and get them to come in and say, hey, for a semester, we'd love to give you a project, try to produce a class. But that's one thing that people always forget. And it's easy now because, New York isn't, fully open all the way. And so they don't have people in those classes, but you go pre-pandemic, I mean, it's full. And I'll tell you right now, as somebody that's used Peloton, when they weren't allowed to be recording in the studio and they were doing the at home, they went through a major, sort of situation they had to figure out. But it's still not the same as it was when that class was full.
Right.
Taking it. It's just
Absolutely.
weird. It's weird.
Well, there's an energy behind that. I mean, it's the
It is.
it's the empty restaurant principle. You're walking down Park Avenue, you're 10 different restaurants, and you walk by the one restaurant that's on an hour wait, and there's people everywhere, and everywhere else is empty. You think that must be the best restaurant. And
Yeah.
you go in there, and the energy is through the roof versus the quiet place where there's nobody and the energy is really low. So when you're exercising, your heart rate's up, and there's adrenaline and music involved, you want to be where there's people. So even if you're doing it through on demand, I can see where Peloton was having great success having those classes. And I mean, remember P90X? They never shot those as isolated one-person videos. There was massive amounts of people in those videos, and they had different camera angles and high energy and, the whole thing. And so I think that you nailed it on the head with that, right? So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And it is hard to forget that. But again, going back to those four points, that's where the technology you kind of have to test, right? I also know, budgets are tight. People don't have thousands of dollars to spend on, video technology or, the production equipment to make it a really good, digital class. But just start small. Everybody thinks that Peloton's hard to reach, in terms of the stratosphere that they're in, but they started somewhere. It's not like they just woke up and, IPO'd. They started with a live class and threw some cameras in there. They watched it and said, well, this sucks. Let's do it again a different way.
Right.
Just sort of tease some of that stuff out as a business owner, because you've got assets. You've got a lot of opportunity within those locations, and then get feedback from your consumers. After every class with all these at-home hardware software platforms, as soon as you're doing that class, it's usually a 2-second survey.
Right.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. Would you bookmark it? And then rate the instructor, rate the class, rate the music, and then rate the difficulty. And that by itself, over time, will give you enough data to start thinking about, all right, well, what should we do? What kind of program should we offer? How should we change the layout of our floor, et cetera, with some of those things?
Yeah, I love being feedback driven and data driven. We used to do that when I had a fitness company many years ago that I sold. We had this one instructor, and she was, when I say rock star, I still have not met anybody like her. She's going to be famous one day. And
yeah.
Her classes were so packed, there was people outside the door that couldn't get in. And we had to keep paying her more and renegotiating. But it was worth it because people were hearing about her and they were just coming in. And so I think that this is something we should seriously look at, is getting that data, right? Like you said, from each class, and who your rockstar instructors are. How do you duplicate that? It's going to be based on personality and character and who they are as an individual, but it can also be built and trained to some degree through SOPs and just standard operating procedures and really good rigorous training programs to help create that environment. So you're more consistent across the board instead of like one's way up here and one's way down here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Well, this is really good stuff. What other, before we close, what other advice would you give? And where do you see us going? Like, let's look down the road, maybe 5 years from now. So brick and mortar fitness, I know will be strong, still be around, be very strong. It's growing, it's accelerating. I think on demand will be even stronger and really facing a strong growth curve and doing well there. 5 years from now, what does it look like to you in your mind, and how is that competing? Are they working together? Are they competing against each other? What does that look like?
I definitely think they're working together.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on the degree to which if you're looking at a Venn diagram, right, two circles that overlap, and how much overlapping area there is really depends on your situation. I think it's important for people become a student of the game. Right. That's something that I always love to say, even playing baseball, I'm the kid that I had the binder, and mechanics and stats and workouts, everything. And there's always something new to learn. So the trade shows, use those, to ask and sort of open the dialogue of what are you doing? What's your facility doing to try to compete, or to try to get on the digital movement? But then also don't just jump into the fad right away, right? There's a great book for people that if you're not super business savvy, Business Models for Dummies by Jim Muhlenhausen. And he's a local guy here in Indianapolis. Has been doing business stuff for 40 years. But it really breaks down how you can sort of look at your own business model and think about how to adjust it. Business models evolve, and it's no different for us as a software company. A good business model can become a bad business model, and that's fine. That's okay. But what you don't want to happen is you want to make sure you can switch. All right. If you're moving towards a bad business model, fine. All right. Look at it and let's make sure we make some adjustments to make sure it's still good and sustainable for the long term. And that's just looking at things like your offering, your profit model, how you're monetizing, and sustainability, over time. And so those would be some things I would recommend. Obviously, love talking to people about this stuff, as you know, Nick. So
Yep.
We don't sell this type of conversation. I just do it because I love it. So if people have questions or want to share what they're doing, I'd love to talk to them and be as much help as we can.
Yeah. So if people are looking to connect with you or Upper Hand, your company, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So upperhand.com is our website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. So you just search my name on there and you'll come across me, and just start there.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, hey, this has been so interesting. Thank you so much for being on. It's got my creative juices flowing. I think there's like so much opportunity and so many different things. It's going to look really interesting in the next 5 to 10 years. And I can't wait to see how it unfolds, but I think it's going to be good. And I think a lot of people are going to win, and some people are going to really win. So,
I think you're 100% right. It's going to be, like I said, unlocking some of these things as a brick and mortar is going to be, it's going to be awesome for people. Yeah. And there's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, if you're watching, thank you for joining us today. And remember, the more you know, the more you grow. So like, share, and subscribe on all of our platforms, and especially YouTube. Hit the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube right now. So that way you get notified of future episodes and amazing guests like Kevin today, sharing all these amazing value nuggets of gold here that we have learned from, and caused some major thinking points here for us today. Some really strong things to think about. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, and we'll see you next time.